Understand this clearly, because now we are no longer talking about connection. We are talking about what happens after your mind has already crossed a line it cannot see. Once emotional bonding turns into attachment, and attachment starts feeding your emotional state, something irreversible begins to form inside you. Not visible, not loud, but deeply rooted. Your brain starts assigning meaning to this person far beyond who they actually are. They are no longer just someone you talk to, they become a psychological anchor. And once a human mind finds an anchor that regulates its emotions, it does not want to let go. Not because of love, but because of stability. What most people don't understand is that obsession is not about the person, it is about the role they begin to play in your internal system. At some point, your brain stops asking, "Do I like them?" and starts asking, "What happens to me without them?" And that shift changes everything. Because now you are not choosing them, you are depending on them. And dependency is where logic starts to weaken. You begin to justify behavior you normally would not accept. You begin to ignore things that should have been clear signals. You start tolerating inconsistency, distance, confusion, and emotional gaps, all because your mind has associated this person with relief. And once relief is attached to a person, your brain starts craving them the way it craves certainty. This is where obsession deepens, not through love, but through the fear of losing that emotional regulation. When they are present, your system relaxes. When they are distant, your system destabilizes. And this instability creates urgency. You start needing clarity, needing reassurance, needing connection, not because something is wrong externally, but because something inside you is now dependent. This is why obsession feels so intense. It is not just emotional, it is neurological. Your brain begins to create loops. Thoughts repeat. Scenarios replay. Conversations get analyzed again and again. Not because you want to think about them, but because your mind is trying to solve something it cannot control. It is trying to create certainty where none exists. And the more uncertain the connection becomes, the more your brain tries to resolve it. But in doing so, it strengthens the loop. Now here is where it becomes even more powerful. Emotional withdrawal does not reduce obsession, it amplifies it. When someone pulls back, your brain does not detach, it intensifies focus. Because what was once available is now uncertain. And uncertainty increases value. The less you receive, the more you think about it. The less they respond, the more you analyze. The more inconsistent they become, the more your brain tries to understand. And this creates a deeper fixation, because now you are not just attached, you are mentally invested in solving them. At this point, your emotional state is no longer stable. It fluctuates based on their behavior. A message can lift your mood instantly. Silence can drop it just as fast. And this creates a cycle. You begin to chase the high of connection while trying to avoid the low of distance. And this chase is what turns attachment into obsession. Because now you are no longer experiencing the relationship, you are reacting to it. The deeper problem is that your brain starts confusing intensity with importance. Because what you feel is strong, you assume it must be meaningful. But intensity is not always truth. Intensity is often a response to inconsistency. The stronger the emotional spikes, the more your brain believes this matters. And once something is labeled as important, your mind gives it priority. You think about it more. You focus on it more. You give it more energy. And slowly it starts occupying your mental space. Now your world starts narrowing. Your thoughts return to the same person again and again. You begin to measure your emotional state based on their presence. And without realizing it, you are no longer centered in yourself. You are centered around them. And this is where identity begins to shift. Because when your emotional stability depends on someone else, your sense of self becomes fragile. You start adjusting yourself to maintain the connection. You think before speaking. You act based on how they might react. You become more aware of their behavior than your own. And this is where most people lose control without realizing it. Because everything still looks normal on the outside. You are still talking, still interacting, still connected. But internally, something has changed. You are no longer free in your emotions. You are tied to someone else's patterns. And the more unpredictable those patterns are, the stronger your attachment becomes. Now here is the part most people never see. Obsession is self-reinforcing. The more you think about someone, the more emotionally attached you become. And the more attached you become, the more you think about them. It is a loop. A closed system where your own attention fuels your attachment. And because you cannot see this loop clearly, you believe the feeling is coming from the outside, when in reality it is being generated inside your own mind. At some point, you stop questioning it. You accept the intensity as real, as meaningful, as something you cannot control. But the truth is, it is not uncontrollable, it is just unconscious. You are reacting to patterns that you have not yet understood. And until you understand them, you will keep repeating them. Because the mind does not break loops it cannot see. And this is why obsession feels impossible to let go of. Not because the person is irreplaceable, but because the pattern is deeply wired. You are not just attached to them, you are attached to how your mind has learned to function around them. And breaking that does not just mean letting go of a person, it means restructuring your emotional system. And most people do not do that. They try to remove the person, but keep the pattern. They distract themselves, they force distance, they try to move on. But internally, the loop is still active. The thoughts still come back. The feelings still return. Because nothing has changed at the core. Now stay here because we are about to go even deeper into the most critical part. The point where obsession either fully takes over or begins to break. Stay with this, because now we are entering the point where obsession stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like something that is happening to you. And this is where most people lose themselves completely, because once the loop becomes strong enough, your mind stops asking for permission, starts running automatically. You wake up and they are already in your thoughts. You try to distract yourself, but your mind keeps going back. You replay old moments, imagine new ones, create conversations that never happened, and the more you try to stop it, the stronger it becomes, because suppression does not break attachment. It intensifies it. Your brain treats suppression as importance. If you are trying to avoid something, it must matter, so it keeps bringing it back again and again. Now your attention is no longer voluntary. It is conditioned, and this is where obsession becomes dangerous, because now you are not just emotionally attached. You are cognitively trapped. Your thoughts are no longer exploring. They are circling. Same person, same questions, same emotional reactions on repeat. And this repetition creates depth, because the brain strengthens what it repeats. The more you think about something, the more real it feels. The more real it feels, the more important it becomes. And the more important it becomes, the harder it is to detach. This is how obsession builds itself, from inside, without any external force. Now here's where it becomes even more intense. Your brain starts linking everything to them. Songs, places, memories, random moments. Everything becomes a trigger, and every trigger pulls you back into the loop. So even when they are not present, they are still affecting you, because they exist in your mental environment. And once someone occupies your mental environment like this, they don't need to be physically present to control your emotional state. Now understand how deep this goes. At this stage, your brain is no longer chasing the person. It is chasing the feeling, that moment of connection, that emotional high, that sense of being seen. And because those moments were real, your brain believes they can return, so it holds on, not to what is happening now, but to what once happened. And this creates a powerful illusion that if you just try a little more, understand a little better, stay a little longer, everything will go back to how it felt before. But here's the truth your mind avoids. The past is not a promise. It is a memory, and obsession feeds on memories, because memories are perfect. They are edited, they highlight the highs and soften the lows. So your brain keeps comparing the present to an idealized past. And every comparison deepens your attachment, because now you are not just attached to a person. You are attached to a version of them that may no longer exist. And this is where emotional distortion happens. You start ignoring reality and prioritizing potential. You don't see what is happening. You see what could happen, and that keeps you stuck, because potential has no end, can always feel possible. Now this is the breaking point, the moment where obsession either takes full control or begins to collapse, because eventually your system gets exhausted, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. The constant thinking, the constant analyzing, the constant emotional fluctuation, it drains you. And at some point, you feel something different, not intensity, not longing, but fatigue, a quiet heaviness, a realization that no matter how much you think, nothing is changing. And this is the first moment of clarity, the first crack in the loop, because now your brain starts seeing the pattern, not just the person. You begin to notice that your thoughts are repetitive, that your emotions are reactive, that your state is unstable. And once you see that clearly, something shifts, because awareness breaks unconscious patterns. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything can change. Obsession does not end when the person leaves. It ends when the pattern loses power. And the pattern loses power when you stop feeding it, not by force, but by understanding. You don't fight the thoughts. You observe them. You don't react to the feeling. You sit with it. You don't chase the person. You return to yourself. And slowly, the intensity begins to reduce, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped depending. And this is the transformation from obsession back to control, from external dependency back to internal stability. But this is not instant. It is gradual, just like the obsession was built slowly. It must dissolve slowly, and the deeper the attachment was, the more awareness it requires, because you are not just letting go of a person. You are letting go of a version of yourself, the version that needed them, and rebuilding a version that does not. Now stay here, because we are about to go into the final and most powerful shift, the part where obsession is completely understood and permanently broken. Stay with this, because now we reach the point where everything becomes brutally clear, the part most people avoid, the part that actually frees you, because up until now, your mind has been focused on them, what they did, what they said, why they changed, what it all meant. But the real shift happens when your focus moves away from them and comes back to you, because the truth is, obsession was never about them. It was about what they activated inside you. A need to be seen, a need to feel chosen, a need to feel emotionally alive, something that was already there, waiting. And when they appeared, they didn't create it, they triggered it. And this is where everything changes, because if they triggered it, that means it already existed within you. So the real question is not, why am I obsessed with them? The real question is, why did I need them this deeply? Because obsession is not attachment to a person. It is attachment to a feeling you could not generate on your own. And once you see that clearly, the illusion starts to break, because now you are no longer looking at them as the source. You are seeing them as a reflection of your unmet emotional needs, your unprocessed patterns, your internal gaps. And this is uncomfortable, because now you can't blame them anymore. You have to face yourself, the part of you that craved validation, the part of you that feared being alone, the part of you that felt incomplete without someone. And this is the real work, because until you understand those parts, you will repeat the same pattern, different person, same obsession. Now here's the deepest shift. You stop trying to remove the person and start rebuilding yourself. You start asking, what am I avoiding within me? What feeling am I trying to escape? What am I expecting someone else to fix? And slowly, you begin to reconnect, not with them, but with your own emotional system. You learn to sit with your feelings without needing distraction, without needing validation, without needing someone else to regulate them. And this is where power returns. Because the moment you can feel deeply, without losing control, you are no longer dependent. Now your emotions belong to you again. Not to someone else's behavior, not to someone else's presence. And from this place, something important happens. The intensity fades, not because the person became less important, but because you became more stable. You no longer chase the feeling, because you can create it within yourself. You no longer overthink every action, because your mind is no longer trying to solve them. You no longer fear losing them, because you are no longer losing yourself. And this is the final transformation, from obsession to clarity, from dependency to self-regulation, from emotional chaos to emotional control. Now understand this clearly. The goal was never to stop caring. The goal was to stop needing, because care is healthy, but need creates attachment, and attachment without awareness creates obsession. So when you reach this point, you don't become cold, you don't become detached from life, you become grounded. You can still feel, but you don't lose yourself in the feeling. You can still connect, but you don't depend on the connection. You can still care, but you don't collapse without it. And that is the difference between emotional bonding and emotional freedom. Now let this settle, because this is where everything becomes simple. You don't break obsession by forcing distance. You break it by removing the need that created it. And once that need is understood, processed, and no longer controlling you, the obsession dissolves, not dramatically, not suddenly, but quietly, just like it was created. And in that quiet, you return to yourself. And once you return to yourself, you realize something powerful. You were never chasing them. You were chasing a part of you that you had not yet learned to hold. And now you can, and that changes everything, because now you are no longer controlled by what you feel. You are aware of it, grounded in it, and free within it. And in the end, this is what everything comes down to. Not how deeply you felt, not how intense the connection was, not how hard it is to let go, but whether you were able to stay yourself while feeling everything. Because obsession is not proof of love. It is proof of loss of control. And the moment you lose control of your inner world, you start giving power to something outside of you. Person, the feeling, a memory, and slowly, without realizing it, you stop living your life and start orbiting around theirs. But the truth is, no connection, no matter how deep, is meant to cost you yourself. Because the moment you lose yourself, even the strongest connection becomes a form of suffering. So the real question was never, why can't I let go of them? The real question was, why did I lose myself so deeply in them? And once you answer that, everything changes, because now you are no longer trying to escape the feeling. You are understanding it, and understanding creates distance. Distance from the pattern, distance from the illusion, distance from the emotional loop that once controlled you. And in that distance, you begin to see clearly that what felt like obsession was never about them. It was about something inside you that needed to be seen. And once you see it, you don't chase anymore. You don't force anymore. You don't lose yourself anymore. You choose consciously, calmly, clearly, and that choice is what brings you back, not to them, but to yourself. And when you finally return to yourself, you don't just break the obsession, you break the pattern forever, and that is where your real freedom begins. This is Voxlore Audio, where we don't just explain emotions, we uncover the hidden psychology behind why they control you, until you learn how to control them